Hi, everyone. How's everybody doing today? I just want to thank everybody for coming. Arigashimasu. So today is, I think, will be a good class because the two pointers that we're looking at today. Um, Before I read the clip from a book to set the stage, I want to read the two specific um, points in the manual today because these were two that Suzuki Sensei constantly reminded people of, and that is number 13 and number 17. Number 13 says, make sure your mind is positive as you enter the dojo. Any negative feelings you might be harboring must be left outside the dojo. There's no place for them inside. And number 17, excuse me, always enter the dojo with an empty mind. If you think you know already, it will be difficult for you to learn. Before every police class that Suzuki Sensei taught, he quoted from the book Zen Mind, Beginner's Mind. If you've not read that book, I highly recommend it. It is a thin book. It was written many years ago from recorded talks that Shunryu Suzuki Roshi gave at the San Francisco Zen Center, and they took his talks, very similar to what Curtis Sensei did in Letting Go. Letting Go is not a written book, so to speak. It was taken from clips of Curtis Sensei's talks that we recorded, and you can find them on curtissensei.com. And similar with Suzuki Roshi's book, if you go on to, I believe the website is Cuke, CUKE.com. That is a former student of Suzuki Roshi's who helped translate. I believe he helped translate the book. And I don't mean translate as from Japanese to English, but as you know, if you're an ESL person, if English is your second language, you don't actually sometimes talk you don't talk like in correct English sometimes. So what I'd like to, Suzuki Sensei quoted, in the beginner's mind there are many possibilities, and in the expert mind there are none. And he often quoted that before every police class. Fellas, you got to have a beginner's mind. Gave a little story, about the tea person who pours the tea and it overflows. Everyone, I'm sure, has heard that story. But what I want to read from you is, or read from this, read to you guys, is a clip from Suzuki Roshi's book, Zen Mind, Beginner's Mind. And it states, in the beginner's mind, there is no thought, I have attained something. All self-centered thoughts limit our vast mind. When you have no thought of achievement, no thought of self, we are true beginners. Then we can really learn something. The beginner's mind is a mind of compassion. When our mind is compassionate, it is boundless. Dogen always emphasized how important it is to resume our boundless original mind. Then we are always true to ourselves, in sympathy with all beings, and can actually practice. So the most difficult thing is always to keep your beginner's mind. There is no need to have a deep understanding. Even though you read many books, you must read each sentence with a fresh mind. You should not say, I know what meditation is, or I have attained enlightenment. This is also the real secret of the arts. Always be a beginner. Be very, very careful about this point. If you start to practice meditation, you will begin to appreciate your beginner's mind. It is the secret of practice. And I remember that because when I came upon Zen Mind, Beginner's Mind, I not only bought the book, I bought the audiobook, and I would listen to it. I listened to it probably every day for 10 years. Constantly in my car, that's what would be playing. There'd be no music, it'd be Zen Mind, Beginner's Mind at whatever I left off. And I could quote pages and chapters out of it. I knew it so well. Before I went to bed, boom, I'd go to sleep listening to that book. I highly recommend it. It's a really good book. Suzuki Sensei had that book, and he often would talk about, beginner's mind and how important it is. And, that's why in the training manual, 2 points basically, have a positive mind, have a beginner's mind. And that's so important. I stress this to all the introductory students I have, all the beginning students I have. We even Curtis Sensei even talks about it. I mean, in the advanced classes. So, this is something that can't be stressed enough, of truly having that beginner's sense about you. Yeah, I mean, if you think back in your past and when you first started Aikido or started anything for that matter, and how excited you were, how you couldn't wait to get to the dojo, or how you couldn't wait to practice certain techniques. I, would often, couldn't wait. I had a series of friends that we all started Aikido together, and literally at 4:30 in the afternoon, when my job was about to get out, I'd call my friend and go, "So, going to the dojo tonight?" And if he said no, I'd be like, "Good, I'll have one up on you." We had that friendly competition, and then I'd show up at the dojo, and there they'd be, and I'd go, "Hey, I thought you weren't coming." He goes, "Oh no, I couldn't have you go and me not. I've got to be here." And we were excited to train, excited to be there and have fun. And it was just a lot of fun being a beginner. And so I want to open it up to you guys, because I want to hear about your experience with beginner's mind, with having that opportunity to train in whatever for the first time, and how you couldn't wait to get back at it. We've been doing these Zoom classes, and they're a lot of fun. Don't get me wrong, but I'm telling you what, I'm clamoring to get back in the dojo. I can't wait, and that could be months away yet. So I'm going to really be looking forward to practicing my beginner's mind. So without further ado, I'd like to call in Fincher Sterling, because Fincher always sets the tone. Fincher is also a beginning teacher here in Maui, teaches the beginners side by side with me in another class. So Fincher, please talk to us, man.
Thank you, Sensei. Well, yeah, I think that teaching beginners, which I've been doing for a few years, you get to share that. And it helps you to maintain that type of approach, because, most people, when they come, they don't know anything, and they're a little intimidated, but sort of excited. And once they start training and they understand that that not knowing something is what they're supposed to do. You're not supposed to come in here and do it well. You're supposed to come in here and learn your, I guess, your limitations. You learn your ignorance of anything, but especially on the mat with the arts, and that's a fun thing. And I think it helps me to revisit the memories of when I started, and the stories where I don't think I've ever felt any more uncoordinated than when I started. And so I relate to the beginner students when they come in. And the interesting thing too is that I recall when I started, and I try to tell the new students this too, that really just allow yourself to be not good. Allow yourself not to know what's going on. Allow yourself to struggle with this thing, because then as you progress, you'll notice that progression. You'll appreciate that progression. You'll sort of delight in the next class, because you'll know more than the last class. And if you come in like some students that have had martial arts in the past, and and sort of come in with their own take on things, I've noticed don't really have that enjoyment. They don't have that delight in learning something and noticing the progression that you might be going through, because they're already sort of saying, well, this is not, you know, I already know this, or I know something better than what you're teaching. So it's a real advantage to come in ignorant in a sense, because then you get to learn and you get to be excited about what you're learning. So it's good that, you know, I'm sort of take advantage of sharing that with new students so that I can stay in that mindset as well. That's what comes to mind anyway.
Yeah, that's you say that, and that's the one thing that I've certainly enjoyed about teaching beginners, and that is, they put you in that state of mind yourself. You're constantly reminded of, oh yeah, this is what it's like to start something new, and you mentioned about people having previous martial arts experience, and I distinctly remember this. Suzuki Sensei would stand behind the desk as the police cadets would check in, and he would ask their name, check them off the list, and then the next question would be, have you trained any martial arts? Whether it be Taekwondo, Judo, Jiu-Jitsu, whatever, he would write it down, what they trained. And then look at him, okay, he's trained this. Okay, next. Okay, what's your name? Okay, click. Okay, have you trained any martial arts? I mean, that was distinctly every single police class he would ask them, because he wanted to find out, oh, do they have any preconceived notions? Because what you see a lot of people do is when they do come in with these preconceived ideas is either A, they think they know everything already, or B, they're just putting another feather in their cap. Oh yeah, I'm going to get checked out in this, instead of just coming in with an open mind. I'd like to ask, thank you very much, Fincher, and how about Olaf Schubert Sensei? What can you tell us from Germany, my friend?
Yeah, this is exactly the topic. Yeah, I think beginner's mind is, for me, it was easier to have when I was starting in Aikido. And it became harder later on, because you acquire all this knowledge about the techniques and the teachings, and then at some point you think you know your stuff around the dojo. And in my experience, for me, it felt harder to keep having this beginner's mind as I progressed in Aikido. The funny thing is, back in the days before we joined Ki Society, our dojo was called Shoshin Aikido Dojo, which Shoshin, as you know, is the beginner's mind. So this is very funny, because this is what I at least often did not do, despite our dojo name. Because you acquire this expert mind. And yeah, so when I sought out Curtis Sensei and Ki Aikido, it was because out of a need or a lack that I felt inside, that there's something missing in my training. That's why I came to Ki Aikido and to Curtis Sensei. But soon I discovered that I couldn't let go of the old stuff that I had learned. And I wanted to add, like Tracy Sensei just said, I wanted to add cool stuff to what I had already learned, to make it work invincibly, basically. I wanted to infuse it with ki, the thousands of techniques that I knew already and thought, okay, then I'm going to be invincible. And I had to discover this doesn't work this way. I had to learn every technique from scratch again, because this was not possible to infuse my old Shihonage with ki. I had to learn every step again, from the basics. Zenshin Koshin, this is something we didn't do before. So every step was different, how to stand, how to, and I talked to Curtis Sensei a lot over the years, of course. And he can attest, I was so afraid of letting go of my old techniques, afraid to let go of all that I had learned. And he said always to me, what are you afraid of? Where could this go, possibly? You cannot forget all this. It will be there, don't worry. Just do what we do now, and you will be fine. And over the years, I discovered he was right, of course. I still remember all these old techniques, but I don't do them anymore, because what I have learned now is, I think, the way I want to do it. And it has become so ingrained that I simply don't do the old stuff anymore, but it's still there. I could remember, so if I wanted to. So now again in Ki Aikido is the same problem coming up, how to keep a beginner's mind and not think, oh, now I got this down. So it's always like this. It never changes, I guess.
Yeah, it never changes. And I have to commend you. I mean, it takes a lot for somebody who's gone up the ranks and in a different style, and then just kind of let that all go and start again. I mean, it's kind of like, you had to you experienced it when you first started Aikido, and then you re-experienced it for real when you started in the Ki Society. So yeah, that takes a lot. I mean, a lot of people have tried and have failed miserably at that. So I commend you for that. That's excellent. Yeah. It's funny, you talk about, infusing ki in your techniques. And I remember hearing that a lot from people saying, oh, well, I'm going to go learn this harder style because, it takes a lot to be soft, but I really want to do the technique, real life style, and I used to think, yeah, they're probably onto something, when that was completely wrong. It's the wrong mindset, wrong ideas, had no freaking clue what I was doing when I thought that way, or heard other people talk about it, because they were higher ranked than me. And I thought, oh yeah, that's what I want to do. And I remember even talking to Suzuki Sensei, and I remember this is funny, because I wrote a little article for Aikido Today magazine on my visit to Maui, and how, before I moved here, but, it was back when the old dojo was still around. And I went there and visited Suzuki Sensei and Curtis Sensei, and wrote a little article. And I said, oh, Sensei, I wrote this article. I'm going to submit it to Aikido Today magazine. What do you think? He goes, I'd like to read it first. I said, okay. So I emailed it to him, and he emailed me back the next day and said, I let Suzuki Sensei read your article. Please do not refer to his style of Aikido as combat style Aikido, which I had thought, wow, this Suzuki Sensei was really on to teach his police this combat effective Aikido. And I wrote it in the article, and boy, Curtis Sensei did not like that idea at all, and that was eliminated. In fact, I don't even think the article even made it to Aikido Today magazine, because it was so bad. I completely misconceived everything they were teaching back then. So yeah, I have to say, I could really relate to that. So let me ask, let me see here. Lillian Paiva Sensei. She's right up there in the upper left corner. She's always the first one on Zoom. John gets on Zoom and boom, Lillian's right there. Talk to me.
Uh, good evening, Sensei, and everybody. First of all, I want to say I really enjoy these classes and getting to listen to Schubert Sensei and Vogel Sensei and these people that I never get to talk to. And sometimes they're a really hard act to follow. That being said, I guess what I want to say is that when I was a beginner, I didn't have beginner's mind at all. I came from judo. My husband had a dojo, and for health reasons, I had to stop judo for a while. And I went to Aikido, and I had all these expectations. Now, I've always, in everything I've done, have kind of approached them with the 2 points you made about a positive mind and leaving things behind. That I've always tried to do, whether it was Aikido or anything else. But I got to tell you, beginner's mind really didn't start happening till after that Nidon test I took, which I cried for 3 days after because I wanted to do it right. And boy, that was a big lesson. And I realized all that time I really wasn't training the way I should. I was still trying to do something too much. And I don't know if I have a couple of students, 2, 3 students that have been showing up pretty regular to your class. And I don't know if they're able to speak, but I would sure love to hear from Jack or Lucky if their microphones work.
I see them. I see them down here, Lucky Friend and Jack Friend.
Yeah, and their sister Rose shows up most of the time too. I sure would like to know if their microphones work and if they can speak.
Lucky, Jack, your sensei's calling you to the mat. What can you say? Looks like you're on mute. Looks like Jack was on mute, not mute. We can wait for you to get set up if you want. I can come back to you. Oh, Jack, are you there? Okay, Gloria, you raised your hand. Jack, Lucky, get your stuff working. We'll come back to you. Gloria, were you raising your hand?
Thank you, Sensei. I was just saying that he was talking, but we couldn't hear him. But since you asked, when I like Fincher, when I started Aikido, I was probably the most uncoordinated person in the world, and I did not come with any background in martial arts. I never even thought about them until my son took karate for a couple of years, or for a year, and hated it. And so I wanted to find something for him. So after I was introduced to Aikido, I read an article about Nalabai Sensei, and I knew for some reason that this is the person I had to study with. Well, it took me 2 years to find him because I was looking in the phone book for all the wrong things. And just by coincidence, well, maybe not coincidence, I was asked to sit on a committee the night before a hiring committee at Windward Community College for a religion lecturer. And during the interview, he mentioned studying with Nalawai Sensei, and I said, "Oh, I have to talk to you." So I started. He told me how to get there. I went, and he wasn't there, but he did show up at subsequent classes. But I couldn't roll. I was horrible. But I did finally get some things going. And then what I noticed was that every time a new person came to class, Nalawai Sensei would, as we still do, go through all the basics. And so we're doing 1 point and all this kind of stuff. And I'm thinking, oh, we have to do that again. And it took me a while to realize that this was really valuable. That every time we do that, I learned something. And so I guess at that point I went back to beginner's mind, because realizing that I had not learned it all before. I guess it was kind of mini expert, and I was by no means an expert with passing key tests or giving them, especially not giving them. And I still feel that when I am doing testing, I am in the beginner stage because I have a whole lot to learn. And I should say that teaching children is lovely when we get beginners. They're so eager to learn. And one thing that I really enjoyed when I was teaching music at community college was watching people get something. It's almost like you can see the light bulb and see it come on in their eyes, and there's a great deal of joy in that. And so it keeps me reminded of what it's like to be a beginner and to learn something for the first time.
Thank you so much for sharing. Yeah, I can totally relate to that. It took me a year to do rolls on the right side. I just couldn't do rolls. I couldn't roll. I just couldn't. It took me a year. So much so that my teacher had to embarrass me in front of everyone that I couldn't roll on my right side. Jack, it looks like you came on as a second, and then are you there with us? Saw your audio connecting.
Hello?
Yes, we got you.
There we go. Okay, awesome. Sorry, there was a little bit of a confusion. I've been having reception problems this whole time, so I thought that might be it. But my brother heard me from the other room and told me how to fix it.
Oh, good.
Anyway, and I apologize. I missed the first part of class again because I couldn't connect to the meeting. So what I think we're talking about the beginner's mind.
Yes.
And I'm fortunate enough to have Sensei Paiva, and to train in her dojo. And I think because I haven't taken my Shodan test yet, my brother and I are both first Q, and what Sensei Paiva has always said is that everything up until your black belt is all it's all preparation. It's all, setting the foundation so that once you get your black belt and you can start learning, so that the real training begins then. And I think it's really helped me because for lack of better words, kept me in my place. I've always shown up to training with the understanding that, I'm here to learn, and I'm here to, I am a beginner.
Good. So when will you be testing for Shodan? You can answer that, Paiva Sensei, if you know. When are they going to be testing?
I had talked to Curtis Sensei about this, and he said a year after EQ, which would be, beginning of next year, and then of course the pandemic hit.
Oh, of course.
So at the moment, I'm sure Jack and Lucky are still practicing at home. But yeah, as soon as we get through this, sometime next year, I hope.
Maybe I'll take a visit over there.
And thank you, Jack, for making me sound great.
Maybe I'll take a visit to Honoka and give them a little extra training. I would love that. I love Shodans. So with that, I would like to go to Europe. I'd like to go back to Europe. Toby Vogel Sensei, you're right there dead center in my screen, so talk to me or talk to us.
Thank you, Sensei. I'm really glad about the topic beginner's mind because there's some saying that says what you can understand today you can teach tomorrow, or what you have learned today you can teach tomorrow.
Yes.
I still haven't got it. I'm really I'm always like judging. So comparing what I learned in the past and then trying to apply it today, and then Goethe Sensei comes and does something different, and I go, yeah, but isn't this how we used to? And so on. So I really have difficulties with that, with keeping up with the beginner's mind, to be open to the teaching. And of course, you go to the class and you want to learn something. But I always have this nagging voice in my head that goes, yeah, but, or, is that really so? There's always this voice in my head kind of judging what it's seeing. So I really have a lot of trouble with the beginner's mind and coming in fresh because of the history that you have. although I do come in with the same joy I had as in the beginning, I really like Aikido and the training and so on, and meeting all the people that are involved. But it's difficult. So I'm really glad that people are also struggling. I'm not feeling alone anymore. I thought I was the only one having that problem, but this is a good way of seeing that everybody has to deal with it. So thank you, Sensei, for this talk.
I know. Or, you know, it kind of reminds me what you talked about there is when, okay, we go to a seminar or you go to headquarters and they show a technique and it's completely different than how you learned it. You go, hey, what changed? Did this change? I got to write this down. It changed. I got to tell everybody how this technique has changed. When techniques don't change, the basics are always the same. Yeah, you know, I mean, but we get stuck in this gathering mode of techniques and, oh, we'll learn it this way and we'll do it this way. And then wait a minute. Here's how bad I was. When I was living in Arizona, I would go to all these seminars and then I'd come back and I'd go, okay, you want to learn it Suzuki Sensei way? Do it like this. And then my friend would go, well, if you want to do it Kashiwake Sensei way, you do it like this. And I'd be, I went to an Aikigai seminar. Saito Sensei did it this way. Whoa, what do you think of that? And it was just like, come on. I had no life. I mean, that's what I did. So yeah, you don't want to get there. I mean, and I remind people all the time, because I get the people who are, you know, adjusting, they get to third cue, they've learned how to do the locks, then they're into the brown belt phase, and that's a very dangerous phrase. Jack, Lucky, know that, brown belt, very dangerous, because that's when you think you might know something, you know, and you get into this mode of, hey, I'm wearing a hakama, or, you know, back when I was training, you could wear a hakama at third cue. Now they wait for Shodan. But then, you know, Shodan, you put that hakama on and you're like, hey, I'm a big shot now. You know? Hey, look at here. Look at me. And I just tell you, that's just when, you know, usually you get knocked down a peg or two and you realize, well, I'm really not as great as I thought I was. That's happened to me many times, even recently. So with that in mind, Charles Boyer Sensei, I'd love to hear a story from you, because I know it'll be good.
Well, thank you very much, Sensei. You're too kind. Yeah, well, I'll give, so there's a kind of, some of us have been training for a while, and there are some people here that have trained less. And so maybe I'll give a recent example of how it's come up for me, this thing of beginner's mind. You know, so you've been doing this class for around a month now, maybe a little longer. And I didn't attend the first session. And, you know, Curtis Sensei kind of reminded some of us, oh, you might want to attend Reasoner Sensei's class. And so, you know, so I'm attending his classes, so why not this class, right? So he was pointing out to me, he was giving me a chance to like a reminder, you know, you need to have beginner's mind. This is how you do it, right? And so, you know, I think for a lot of us, this comes up all the time. It's just whether we're willing to acknowledge that it's there in front of us. And of course, we have a teacher that's willing to remind us from time to time. So, you know, we're very fortunate in that way. But that's my recent example of how, you know, for someone that's been training for a while, how it comes up. Like, oh, I don't have to do that. That's okay. I know that, right? But then, oh, maybe you don't know as much as you think. And then, so speaking of the enthusiasm of a beginner, of a beginning student, I'll just share my other story. It's, you know, it's kind of related to what you were saying about your first year of training. So I started in a dojo in South Carolina, and there was many years ago, so they used to do these taigi competitions in Japan. And the taigi is like 6 combined arts together that 2 people do, and then they get judged, for those of you who don't know. And then another pair will do the similar or same 6 arts, and they'll get judged and so forth. And then people, they get ranked according to how they were judged. And so the first year they held this in Japan, the top student in South Carolina, who was an instructor at this stage, but he was also Shainer Sensei's top student. And Shainer Sensei's wife won the overall competition for the first year that it was held in Japan. It was won by a non-Japanese team, which was quite controversial, I guess, from what I hear. I was not there. I hadn't started training quite yet, but it was in the news, and there was a lot of talk about it in the dojo right when I started. So Shainer Sensei's wife was one of the 2 members of this team, and she was, for the most part, she was the uke, the person taking the falls, and I was just captivated by her ability to take ukemi. And so, in those kind of first few years of training, I was just determined to roll, to do an Aikido roll the way she did, and it was quite a difficult thing to accomplish because her rolls were just impeccable. They were just the most beautiful thing I had ever seen. And so I would go, I would show up to class an hour before class time to get some mat time to train, to practice my rolls. And then there would be other students. There was another guy who was starting around the same time I did, who had the same kind of eagerness to learn. We would push each other. And, sometimes we'd show up and there would be like a children's class going on. We'd be like, oh, darn it. So it was like that kind of enthusiasm for the kind of beginning enthusiasm that, as with training, sometimes if you're not careful, that can really slip away from us. So I thought I'd share that story as well. That, that kind of desire to learn something is really important, I think. And, and I think Schubert Sensei mentioned this, and Dogo Sensei also, that, we never, it's really good to feel like you never quite understand it. This is a good thing, right? You're never quite there. There's always more to this for us to learn. And, and if that goes away, then we're in trouble, right? And of course, our teacher, if we have a teacher who cares, the teacher will remind us and tell us, oh, watch it here, be careful. Okay, so I think that's my spiel about Beginner's Mind. And it's a great book, by the way, Zen Mind, Beginner's Mind. I recommend it to everyone. It's very thin. Yeah,
very thin.
Take a look.
Thank you so much. I love those stories. Those are great, fantastic. Toy Sensei studied Zen. We all know this. He studied Rinzai Zen, and I figured, I was living in Arizona. We didn't have a meditation class in Arizona at the dojo. He just didn't emphasize it. We did the little, we did like 15 minutes before class or 10 minutes before class, and that was about it. And we did Masogi once a month, and that was it. So, Suzuki Sensei always used to say, the secret to Aikido, fellas, is the interdiscipline training. Interdiscipline training is where it's at: breathing, meditation, Masogi, console. So I said, oh yeah, there's a little Zen center near, Tempe, Arizona. I think I'm going to go to that. So I decided to go. I started meditating there on my non-Aikido nights, and they come up and they say, oh, we're going to have a seishin. And I said, oh, really? What's that? Oh, that's where we do 5 days of meditation. Oh no, sign me up. I'll take it. Put me in there. I'll take vacation. I'll do this session with you guys. And the Roshi at the time was the oldest Roshi like in the world. He was 95 years old. Sasaki Roshi was a legend in the Zen community. So when you go and you're a new student there, you get to have tea with him. So you go in the little room there, and he's there on his little throne, and there was like 3 or 4 of us that were brand new, and we're having tea, and he asked everyone their name and what they do, and why they're there. And I said, oh, and I remember saying, I'm an Aikido student, and my teacher practiced Zen, so I want to practice Zen. And he just kind of went on. The next person, he didn't mind me any do there. So I thought I was a big shot. I'm already studying martial arts. Come on. So when you do these seishins, you have like 3 times a day, they have this thing called sanzen, and that's where you get assigned a koan. You have to do the whole bowing sequence, go in there. He says koan, you tell him your koan, and then you give the answer. And if you don't get the answer, you get the bell. You got a little bell there, you go bing. So I tell you, I walk in there, and he looks at me, and he goes, so, koan? And I haven't got one yet. I'm a new student. He'd obviously forgotten. He's 90-some years old. I'm thinking, koan? Roshi, I don't have one. Oh, where are you? And I said, oh, I'm from northern Arizona. I just start telling him where I'm from, and he go, bing, get out of here. So this happens about 5 times, and I'm still not getting. I'm going, he's asking where I'm from. I'm telling him, what the hell? So I walk back in there. The next time I go back in there, I bow, I look up. He just takes one look at me and doesn't even make for it. Bing, get the hell out of here. I'm out. So finally I walk in, and he looks at me and he goes to the bell and he goes, you must be the worst Aikido teacher ever. Bing! It just set me on my way. I'm telling you, I was heartbroken. I was like, I went to the guy, the head monk there. I go, the Roshi doesn't even let me talk. He goes, oh yeah, he doesn't let me talk. He goes, you got to be advanced to talk. He just knows you. He can look at you and know you don't got it. I was just like, oh, okay. But he did get one thing right. At that time, I was the worst teacher ever. So with that in mind, I'd like to go back to Europe to Christoph. Christoph, could you talk to us, my friend?
Hello to everyone. Thank you for opening the floor to me. Yes, I agree with what was said before. I think this is a very interesting topic. One of the things that come to mind is the attitude that we all have on the mat during seminars. Because personally, I am surprised sometimes by the way Akama people behave on the mat, outside the mat, and I think this discussion this morning is interesting, but we have also to remember the distance there is between the words we are able to put together and tell stories and the reality and the way we really behave towards each other and the way we interact with each other, because sometimes it's intriguing the way people behave, instead of being there to learn and practice together. People are very prompt on telling you what to do, what is wrong with you, what you should be doing instead, etc. And this is sometimes puzzling. So that's one of the things that comes to mind in terms of discussing beginner's mind. Yeah, personally, I'm making mistakes. I'm sure I'm sometimes misbehaving with respect to what I just described. What I try to to keep in mind is what was discussed, the pleasure there is in practicing, in exploring. I can be quite talkative sometimes, so I try to discipline myself, and sometimes I ask my partner, well, let's stop talking, let's just practice, and let's just get sweating, and let's just get playful mind, you know what I mean? Instead of arguing and comparing with what we know, etc. Let's just get to it and practice until we are really out of breath, and in a way not thinking anymore about what we are doing, but just immersed into the into the practice. Well, this is what comes to mind.
You know, thank you so much for sharing that, because totally guilty as charged on a lot of things you've said. And I always used to say I don't like people because I just don't like people. I don't know. I just never like to hang out with people. I'd rather be, I just like to be alone a lot of times. I love telling people what to do. Want somebody, I'll tell them, I'll volunteer. They used to call me the bearer of bad news, because you got bad news to say? Hey, I'll tell it. I was like the worst when it came to this. And Chris Sensei finally looked at me one day and said, Tracy, nobody's going to like you. How can you even be a teacher? Because nobody likes you. And many times, I mean, if it had not been for him, I would be even worse than I am now. So that's saying a lot. Because, you know, I can't tell you the stories that him and I have done privately, because they're so embarrassing. You would, I don't know, it's really bad. I'm just saying, because I didn't have the realization or the recognition to have a beginner's mind. I didn't. I was gathering. I was wanting to be the best. I want to look cool on the mat. I want to roll the best. Oh, Ukemi? Oh, I want to be called up. I want to be the best Uke. Come on, call me up. I'm there. Come on. I used to sit in the middle and look at Kashiwai Sensei, just begging him to call me as Uke, because hey, that's where I could show off. And I was in St. Louis with Curtis Sensei, and I was living in Arizona. I had emailed him and said, oh, Sensei, I see you're going to, do you have an Otomo? I'd like to be there in St. Louis with you. Oh yeah, Tracy, that'd be fantastic. Please, yes. And I remember showing up there and being, I'm the guy, you know, I'm the man, helping out the sensei, and I'm from Arizona. And we were practicing. They couldn't do Misogi at the dojo. I can't remember the reason quite why they couldn't do it there. So we went to a gymnasium, and we were at this gymnasium, and it was a gymnast, had a springy floor, right? Perfect for Uke, baby. Talking, I could jump off that and fly. So I remember, and he's doing some techniques, and of course, Curtis Sensei always uses his Otomo as Uke, and he is just throwing me, and I'm taking some rolls, and I went, next one, I'm going to do a break fall. Even if he doesn't throw me for a break fall, I'm going to do a break fall. And I remember attacking him, and I just remember flying in the air and bouncing like 4 or 5 times down, because the floor was springy, of course. And I'm going boing, 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 boing. And he looked at me. He stopped what he was doing, looked at me and said, what the hell are you doing? Are you having fun showing off like that? And I was just mortified, of course. I'm like, what, Sensei? What? He just said, I'm not going to throw you anymore if you're going to do that. And it really kind of woke me up. I'm like, oh yeah, this can't be showing off like that. Anyway, it was just one of those moments that I've had a million times. But I would like to call on somebody I've not called on before, because I know she'll have something to say, and that's Ladini. Ladini, talk to us. You're one of the beginners, and she has an interesting story, because she started Aikido, right? Went all the way to first Q, then dropped out for a bit, and now has come back wearing a white belt. Talk to us about beginner's mind, Ladini.
That's right. So my experience is I stopped for a long time, 10 years, in fact, when I came back. And I was training for Showdown and then left and then moved back to Maui last year. So I will say it's quite exciting to be a beginner again. I mean, I chose not to wear a white belt and to be a beginner because I wanted to have that that feeling again of what it is like to be a beginner and to be there to learn. That was, you know, the impetus for, and I actually felt very much like I was starting from scratch, although there were some expectations that I should know more, but I actually had forgotten a great deal of it. And so, you know, yeah, I hope that it never leaves, regardless of what rank I, or what tests I take. I mean, I hope that will always stay with me. And I struggle, you know, because I've come back, you know, trained and then come back again. The same challenges, you know, that I already know this, or, you know, I've heard this before and things like that. But it's never usually the case, you know. I'm always grateful for being able to come onto the mat, and I don't actually have a great deal of time to train, so it's quite valuable when I can. Yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing. Yeah, it's, you know, a lot of people, you know, and we've seen it. If you're an instructor, you'll see people get to a certain point, and then for reasons, you know, maybe they've moved or they're busy at work or something like that, and they'll leave, and it's so difficult to come back, and you know, because when you do come back, you think, God, I know this. I should know this. I forgot this, you know, but that's okay, you know. It's okay, you know, and we tend to have this mind that beats ourselves up all the time, constantly. I'm not good enough. I'm not this. I'm not that. And that is a part of beginner's mind. It's okay. It's okay to make mistakes. And the key is learning from those mistakes and advancing yourself so that, you know, you can pass that on to somebody else. And that's where Vogel Sensei doesn't like to, oh, what I learned today, I can't teach, I got to teach another day. Well, that's where it comes from, you know. It's from those valuable growth, you know, because that's how you grow, is by making mistakes, you know. And as long as you keep having a beginner's mind of being able to share and grow and continuously, you know, move forward with people in a good manner. That's, I think, really important. And I know, you know, Suzuki Sensei, Curtis Sensei, you know, Shinichi Tohei Sensei, they're always wanting to see that in us. You know, anybody can be a mat expert, as Curtis Sensei always says, but it's really finding your way, your path of mind-body unification and connection. And I think that's something, you know, we learn a lot from the etiquette from, you know, that's why it's written down. That's why it's always good to refresh ourselves. And I think, let's see here. Nadia, would you like to say something?
Hello, Sensei, thank you. So what I was thinking is, actually, I don't remember my mind when I first came to Dojo, but I'm thinking about people who I see on the Dojo for the first time. So they come as beginners, and after what I saw, there comes a moment when I first should test them. So they never been tested before. And I personally feel that this is like a most enjoyable test for me at all. Because even though they don't know the posture and all the things they should do, they don't have expectation as well. And I don't feel any conflict in them. So they're absolutely open. It's like, it's like I'm testing butter or something. So it's very enjoyable. And after first test, there comes another one when it's all ruined because they know that they should hold the hand and it should not be broken. So they start to conflict, and when they have fourth cue, it's the worst from my point of view. Because they know everything. They know every technique, so they know how to do stuff. And they start to tell you, you're testing me wrong. I can't pass the test because you're testing me wrong. And that's very hard. And after that, it becomes smoother and smoother. And again, the test becomes enjoyable when the person has a black belt and even more. But I think that beginners are the best people to test for me. That's what I want to say.
Great, thank you so much. Yeah, I totally can relate to that. Yeah, of course, I've accused Curtis of testing me wrong. So yes, I completely guilty of that as well, because that's why I failed, right? He obviously tested me wrong because I never fail. That was my mindset years ago. Hopefully not so much anymore, even though it does pop up here and there. But our hour is pretty much this. I knew this class would be really fun because these 2 pointers are really something you could just talk about and discuss over and over again because it's never going to get stale. And I told a few people ahead of time, I think I texted Fincher and a few other people, Ladini, and said, oh, come to class tonight. It's going to be a good one because we're talking about 2 really good points. And hopefully next week we'll have some good material as well. But I want to continue with our fairy tale story that I so much enjoy. Let me bring it up here. So we last left the prince. He was right there on the verge of the desert where there was bones everywhere. The people come before him obviously had died. But of course he had better luck than the others, for the yellow horse carried him along like the wind, and on until at last he came within sight of the tree of happiness. And there sat 3 terrible giants, an old giant and his 2 sons. And alongside of each lay a great iron club with sharp spikes in the end of it. But all 3 sat there with their eyes shut, sleeping away as though they had never awakened. And that was a good thing for the prince, for he had never seen such terrible, wicked-looking creatures as the old giant and his 2 sons. He leaped from the back of the yellow horse, and there was nothing but a barley straw. He put it back in his pocket, and he took the book of knowledge and opened it. And this is what it said: "Fear not the giants, for they will not awake, but touch neither the golden fruit nor the silver fruit, for they are not the fruit for you." So when the prince read what the book of knowledge said, he knew that was so. So up he marched to the tree of happiness, and as bold as he could be, and the giant snored away, he shook the leaves a little bit, and there hung 3 apples. The first was gleaming gold, the second was shining silver, and the third was just a really poor shriveled apple. And not even 3 drops of juice could come out of it. "No," said the prince, "that couldn't be it. I've traveled all this way for nothing in the world but a dead apple. After all, it must be the golden fruit that I'm meant to take, in spite of what the book of knowledge says. And for happiness is to be found in anything, it is to be found in such as a golden apple." So he reached up in his hand and plucked the golden apple, and then the tree started to yell. For the tree of happiness began to clamor and call as though every leaf on it had become a tongue to speak with. Help, help, it cried. Here is one coming to rob us of our golden fruit. Up jumped the three giants, and each one snatched its iron club and came after the prince, and to put an end to him without any more talk over the business. But the prince begged and prayed and begged that please spare me my life. Listen, said the old giant, if you'll promise to bring us the sword of brightness that shines in the darkness and cuts whatever edge it is turned against, we will not only spare your life, but we will give you the fruit of happiness in the bargain. That is what the old giant said, and the others agreed to it, for they could once lay hand upon such a sword as they would be the masters of all the world. Well, the prince promised that he would get them the sword of brightness, for one will promise much before one will be knocked on the head with an iron club. And then the giants let him go, and glad enough he was to get away. And we'll end it there tonight. Continue the story next week in the next class. Thank you guys a lot for coming, and domo arigato gozaimashita. Have a great week, and I'll see you next week.